Jai Hind, Namaste, hello and a very warm welcome to UPSC for everyone. My name is Abhinav and in this video we'll be discussing the Hindu and Indian Express for the date 23rd of October 2020. You can get free PDFs for selected topics from my Telegram page, the link to which is available in the description. And for your convenience, I have also added timestamps in the description. So if you want to skip to a particular news, you can use those timestamps. And if you like our videos, then please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any new video that we post. Also, please give us a thumbs up if you like this video. So without wasting your time, let's get started. Starting with the Hindu, front page, US to nix business visas for H-1B specialty jobs. So basically now US is going to halt issuing new H-1B visas. If you remember, we discussed the news where US had raised the minimum wage for H-1B visa. Now why is US doing so? Because election is coming and Trump's main fighting plank has always been against the outsiders, the so-called outsiders that come into US and take away the jobs. So that is why the US State Department has come up with this proposal. Let us look at it. The State Department has proposed not to issue temporary business visas for H-1B specialty occupations. If you remember, I told you that US issues around 85,000 H-1B visas annually and the majority of those visas go to India. Now out of these 85,000, some are for education and rest are for high-skilled jobs. So what companies do, they basically send their professionals, or companies in US call high-skilled professionals into the US to work on particular projects under this H-1B specialty occupation category, which allowed several companies to send tech professionals for a short stay to complete jobs on site. The move could affect hundreds of Indians. Now, but the State Department has said that it would only impact around 6,500 to 8,000 people. B1 in lieu of H policy. Now, there was some exploitation of this B1 visa policy, and as a matter of fact, in 2019, Infosys had to settle with the US government for around $800,000 for misusing this visa category. Let us see what it is. So the proposal, if finalized, will eliminate any misconception that B1 in lieu of H policy provides an alternative avenue for foreign professionals to enter the US and perform skilled labor that allows and even encourages them and their employers to circumvent the restrictions and requirements relating to H non-immigrant classification. Now basically what happens that this B1 category is much easier than H category and it has also lesser fees. So what companies were doing, they were sending their professionals through backdoor routes of B1 visa. So that is why Infosys was fined in the US. The State Department has said the application process for B1 visa does not include similar procedural requirements to protect the US workers like that of H1B visas. Also, the fees for B1 visas are far lower than that of H1B visa. So the State Department estimates that the proposal will affect not more than 6,000 to 8,000 foreign workers per year. On December 17, 2019, the Attorney General of California announced $800,000 settlement against Infosys Limited to resolve allegations that approximately 500 Infosys employees worked in the state on Infosys-sponsored B1 visas. Again, misuse of B1 rather than H1B visa. So now they are tightening the screws, and this is all because of the upcoming US elections. Dr. Reddy's shuts units due to cyber attack. So basically Dr. Reddy recently got DCGI's go ahead to go for Sputnik V phase 2-3 trials in India. Now this is a common occurrence throughout the world. Whenever there are big pharma companies trying to conduct tests, they are being subjected to cyber attacks, and most of these attacks are coming from China, right? So Dr. Reddy's labs have also been hit. So they have temporarily shut some of their operations. So let us look at it. It has isolated all data service centers and temporarily shut some production facilities to prevent action in the wake of cyber attack. The attack comes days after the DCGI's approval of phase 2-3 human clinical trial for Sputnik V vaccine in the country. The trial will be multi-center randomized control study, which includes safety and immunogenicity study. Now, as per the plan, the RDIF, which is the Russian body which developed this, intends to supply 100 million doses of the vaccine to Dr. Reddy's, subject to completion of successful trials and registration of the vaccine by regulatory authorities in India. Deliveries could potentially begin in late 2020. But this vaccine thing has again suffered a setback because a volunteer in Brazil, he died in the AstraZeneca vaccine trial. Now those trials have resumed, but now there is increasing fear among people to take vaccines even if it becomes available. Now directly to page 6 editorial. This editorial, drive a harder bargain at Delhi meet. So this is written by Suhasini Haidar. She usually writes very good pieces. So in this, we don't have to read what she has prescribed what Delhi should do at the upcoming 2+2 ministerial forum, but she has given some background. So I will just tell you about that. Now she's saying that India ratified the Paris Agreement just before the US elections. They happen on November 8th. So just before that, India ratified it. And why? Because the US administration pushed Indian government to ratify it so that it could help Hillary Clinton. And this Paris Accord was Obama's legacy. Now India signed on the promise that US would be giving billions of dollars to India, US and other developed countries to meet its obligations under the Paris Accord. But what happened? Elections happened and there was a regime change because Mr. Trump, he proved all the opinion polls wrong. So she's saying that this time around, India should wait because polls are coming. And I told you how the Trump administration is pushing for BECA before the elections, right? And they're looking for something substantial. So she's saying that we should wait and we should bargain very hard because who knows what might happen. The regime might change because even this time around, the opinion polls are not favoring Mr. Trump, but Mr. Biden. So there could be reversals in policy. So she's saying that we should wait and watch and then we should sign the treaty. Rest, what we should do, what we should not do, it will be clear after this ministerial forum. So I'm not getting into that, right? So this is all about this editorial. Then unrest in Pakistan. So this is about what is happening in Pakistan right now. So 11 opposition parties, they have formed a Pakistan Democratic Movement and they have come together. And what is surprising is the kind of solidarity that they are showing because the polity in Pakistan is highly polarized and they can never get along. But this time around, it seems that they are getting along. And they're cornering the PTI government of Imran Khan over law and order, food shortages, inflation and gas cuts. They have called him a military puppet. But what is more surprising is that they have sharpened their attacks on the establishment, both the government and the army and ISI. Mr. Nawaz Sharif, he openly called out the Army Chief General Bajwa and the ISI Chief Faiz Hamid for rigging election, restricting on media, harassment of journalists, putting pressures on the judiciary and subverting other democratic institutions. And they have held 2 massive rallies already. Now they have planned more rallies and the pressure is mounting on the Pakistani establishment. And how is the Pakistani establishment reacting? Well, they are following a well-worn script. They are making cases against the opposition leaders and they are arresting them and putting them in jail. So as of now, the situation is somewhat under control of the Pakistani establishment, but who knows what might change in the coming days, right? So that is all about this one. Then compelling life story, Lost in Fog of Illogic. This is about the Mutaiya Muralidharan biopic and then the superstar Vijay Sethupathi, he was supposed to play the role. Now he is not. So if you want to read, you can read it, but this has nothing to do with your examination. Then Sooner and Better. Now this is about the indigenously developed test kits. 2. One is Feluda, and yesterday we also discussed CoviRap, which is developed by IIT Kharagpur. So there are some good points in it. Let us discuss those points. So first, it tells that the rapid antigen tests that we take for quick results, they have a problem in the terms that they have low sensitivity and specificity. If you remember, I told you sensitivity means that 100% positive samples would turn out positive, and specificity means that 100% negative samples would turn out negative. So both the tests, Feluda and the CoviRap, they have high sensitivity and specificity, right? So they have advantage over rapid antigen test. And another problem with rapid antigen test is that it requires the nasal swabs. So he's saying that once these 2 tests, the CoviRap and Feluda, they become commercially available, then there won't be any need for, first of all, this swab collection because we can use saliva. Both of them can work on saliva. More importantly, the Feluda test can work on saliva, right? And then it would also decrease the need for trained technicians to carry on these tests. And they would also reduce the need for labs because they are very cheap setups that can be set up everywhere. But it would take some time. So for now, especially in the rural areas, there is lacuna of testing because there is no infrastructure or the facilities available in terms of laboratories. But once these tests become available on a wide scale, then we can go for massive testing in rural areas as well. So this is all that this is telling, right? Then has India passed the COVID-19 peak? There's nothing for me to tell you about it because it is a conversation between two people. You can read it, nothing rocket science about it. Even if you miss it, it's not going to harm you. Now this is important. At 75, the UN needs a rebirth. There must be a global push against the rules that have privileged the rule of few over many. Now this is important, and I've told you this is the 75th year of UN. So we will be getting many reports and editorials about UN. So this is one of those. What do we already know? That one of the biggest problems in UN is that it is an old structure. It was formed in the aftermath of World War II, right? So it reflected the realities of that world. But this is 2020. The world has changed drastically. US is no longer the only superpower. As a matter of fact, when it was formed, it was USA and USSR, Cold War, right? But that is not the ground reality. Now it is a multipolar world. China is rising and other regional powers are also rising, right? So the world today is way much different than what it was when the UN was formed. More so about the UNSC, how UNSC is more of a burden than an enabler in UN because it resists any kind of change, the status quo, and how the veto power has been misused time and again. So this one is also talking about the same only. First, it tells us that it was formed in the aftermath of World War II. Then the UNSC was formed. And if you remember, it was a group of 4 international policing, right? And then it was later upgraded to P5, the UNSC P5, if you remember. So it tells us that it was formed and the P5 was basically to ensure that Third World War does not take place. And one of the reasons supposedly for Third World War not happening yet is because of this P5. But then this body has caused many problems within the UN. So let us quickly look at it. So first, UN formed in the aftermath of World War II, but there is a tussle between power and principle. Although much has changed in the international system since 1945, the world body continues to see a tussle between principle and power. On one hand, UN represents hopes of peaceful and just world order through multilateral cooperation, abidance by international law, and uplift of the downtrodden. But on the other, the design is to privilege the most powerful states of the post-World War II dispensation, granting them commanding heights on international politics via the undemocratic instruments of veto and permanent seats in the Security Council. This is what is the biggest criticism of the UN right now. And I've also told you how different UN organizations like the WHO and then the UN High Commission on Human Rights, which we will not be discussing till the time they do not come out with a report about Chinese human rights violations on the Uyghurs, on Inner Mongolia and on the Tibetan. The day they do that, I will be discussing UNHCR reports with you. If they don't, I will never discuss those reports with you because those reports are highly biased and they have members like Pakistan, China, Russia, Cuba, the biggest violators of human rights on the planet, and they are saying that India is a human right violator. What a joke. Now UNSC powers together to prevent another world war. So keeping all the major powers inside the tent and reasonably happy through joint control over UNSC was intended to be a pragmatic step to avoid another war. Presumably the collective command model of big powers built into the UNSC is one of the reasons why there has been no Third World War. Presumably, right? A model that didn't work. But this model has caused havoc. Immediately after the UN's creation, there was Cold War, and the UN for all practical purposes was a defunct body. It was only after the end of the Cold War in 1990 that UN started to function. But this golden age of UN, it lasted for a very brief period. So immediately after UN's creation, it was pushed on the verge of irrelevance because of Cold War, which left UN little room to implement noble visions of peace, development and human rights. It was only in the uncontested post-World War political milieu, when the US was the sole superpower, the UN could spring back to life to embark on plethora of peacekeeping missions on national building, intervention, promotion and universal human rights. That golden age was too deceptive to last. Now at this juncture, there is great fracture and a new Cold War. So the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, he has labeled the present peaking of geopolitical tensions as a great fracture. We are now past the unipolar moment and the ghosts of Cold War are returning in complex, multi-sided avatars. Now a new Cold War is in vogue, to depict the clash between China and US, tensions involving Russia, Turkey, Iran and Israel in West Asia. We've discussed all of this. And China and its neighbors in Asia, just yesterday we discussed about it, right, are at an all-time high. The recrudescence of the worst habits of competitive vetoing by P5 countries has prevented the UNSC from fulfilling its collective security mandate. Now, there are many obstacles to reform, and one of the biggest is the inertia in the P5 countries, and they are blocking any types of meaningful reforms. So, this editorial concludes by saying that the outmoded procedures based on discriminatory original sin of superior prerogatives of P5 countries have to be discarded. So another one in the long series of the editorials and articles about UN in its 75th year. Army Chief commissions INS Kavaratti at Visakhapatnam. So we have discussed about it yesterday in detail. So we'll quickly go through this. This is the last of the 4 indigenously built anti-submarine warfare stealth corvettes. Now corvettes are small warships and their advantage is that they are very, very swift. So this is a corvette, right? And it is built under the Project 28 Kumarta class by GRSE Kolkata, formally inducted into the Eastern Naval Command. The ship, named after capital of Lakshadweep group of islands, has been constructed using high-grade DMR-249A steel. Now this is important for your PT. This has high carbon content. If you remember, we discussed yesterday that the exoskeleton or the body has high carbon content. This is the DMR-249A steel, and that is produced in India. Now this is going to be a game changer because the introduction of anti-submarine warfare corvettes will be a game changer in the eastern seaboard, especially the Chinese submarines trying to make sorties in the Indian Ocean. I've told you time and again that they were trying to come near the Andaman Islands, then they were pushed back, right? And in yesterday's quad editorial, we also discussed how China is trying to get into the Indian Ocean region in the name of research, right? So this is going to be a very good induction into the Navy. Then page 9, just the headline, Center Vigilant on Women's Safety, Prime Minister, 2+2 talks will focus on regional issues. So I will not be discussing them because these talks will happen soon, and what will happen, we'll get to know. So what's the point of discussing them again and again? Now page 10, Pak made 3,800 ceasefire violations. So this statement was made by a senior official of Ministry of External Affairs. Now why? Because the plenary of FATF is going on, right? We've discussed that FATF had given 27 conditions to Pakistan to follow because Pakistan is in grey list, and I've told you what is grey list and what is blacklist. So if Pakistan gets blacklisted, it won't be able to access any of the beggary it gets from the world in the name of aid, right? So right now it is in grey. Even now there are some restrictions on the funding that it can access, but once it gets into blacklist, then it would be very, very difficult even for its father China to come to Pakistan's rescue. So there were 27 points, out of which Pakistan has followed only 21 conditions, 6 substantial ones including banning and imprisoning terrorists like Hafiz Saeed, they have not followed. So now India is ramping up the ante and trying to build a case against Pakistan. So the senior official said, and he said that this is a violation of the 2003 ceasefire agreement, and these violations are basically to give cover fire to terrorists to enter into Indian territory. So let us quickly look at it. So statement made by senior official of MEA to support infiltration of terrorists across the LOC, clear violation of 2003 ceasefire understanding. Pak is using drones and quadcopters for smuggling of arms and narcotic substances across the international border. So this is new headache, and if you remember, day before yesterday video, we discussed about the hybrid model of fencing. So we discussed there that the troops at those positions, they have got access to drones. So those drones would be used in counter operations for such things. Now India's charge is time with FATF plenary meeting, which is looking at Pakistan's compliance with 27-point FATF action plan. CPI industrial worker base revised to 2016. This is for your paper 3 GS economics, right? So new series not to affect DA given to government staff for now. Now let us see what is this CPI. We have already discussed about inflation, right? That inflation reflects the general increase in prices of goods and services within a given basket, and that is used by government to track the changing pricing levels in the economy. And that is a very important indicator. And from 2014, RBI is using only the CPI, right? There is another indicator called WPI. So I'll also tell you about WPI. First, let us look at what is this CPI industrial worker and what are the changes. So the Labour and Employment Ministry revised the base year for CPI industrial worker from 2001 to 16 to reflect the changing consumption pattern, giving more weightage to spending on health, education, recreation and other miscellaneous expenses while reducing weight of food and beverages. Now see, this is very important. What happens that for poor people, majority of their expenditure is on food, right? Now when they get more income, then the proportion of their expenditure on food decreases. So this is one of the economic indicators. So if the weightage is being reduced of food and beverages, that means that they are getting more income in their hands, right? Now why is the consumer price index important? Measures inflation, used to adjust other government economic indicators and used to improve benefit levels. Now the reduction in food and beverages indicated an increase in disposable income. Now the uses of CPI industrial worker for measuring inflation in retail prices. Number one, to regulate the DA. That is why government said that DA will not be revised for now of government staff, and to revise minimum wages in scheduled employments. Now what are the new features? Some new features have also been included. Number of centers, markets and sample of size for working class family income and expenditure survey were all increased. So these are all the new changes that have been increased. Now you don't have to get into the nitty-gritties of this. It is important for your prelims exam mainly, right? Now what is CPI? This measures price changes from the perspective of a retail buyer. It measures changes over time in the level of retail price of selected goods and services on which consumers of a defined group spend their income. Now the types of CPI, there are 4 types of CPI. CPI for industrial worker, CPI for agricultural laborer and CPI for rural laborer. Now these 3 ones which are dealing with worker or laborer, they are released by Labour Bureau of Ministry of Labour and Employment. So it is easy to remember, whichever is dealing with worker or laborer, so it is related to Labour Bureau, Ministry of Labour and Employment, right? And the CPI rural, urban and combined, this one is released by CSO in the MOSPI, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, right? So 4 are there, 3 are released by Labour Bureau, all relating with worker and labor, and the CPI rural urban combined by CSO in MOSPI. Now in April 2014, RBI adopted CPI as the key measure of inflation. Now there is another indicator called WPI, right? So let me tell you something about WPI as well. Like CPI, WPI also measures changes in prices, but that only deals with goods, number one, right? And WPI indicates the level of price changes at the producer level. Let me just show you. Now this is the producer and he could be producing anything that is included in the WPI basket. But the condition is that only goods are there, right? Now producer always sells at wholesale price because that selling is done in bulk. So that is why it is called wholesale, right? Now these wholesale prices are always lower. You must have also experienced that sometime, that some of you might have gone to Mandi or some other place to buy the goods in bulk amount if there is a big need, right? To save money. Now what happens from the producer to the consumer, that is you, when you go to a shop to buy a commodity, there are many intermediaries in the form of supply chain, storage, distribution. All of this requires cost in terms of fuel, in terms of rent, right? Then there are taxes involved and other charges like commissions of the people who are involved in all these activities, commissions, salaries, wages, etc., right? So all these are added to the wholesale price plus the margin of the shopkeeper, and after that you get the retail price, right? So the real indicator of price changes in an economy would be the consumer, because this is what you actually get at the end of the day. Doesn't matter. So RBI shifted from WPI to CPI in 2014. So CPI reflects what consumer pays to buy, but they also measure the WPI, and the divergence between WPI and CPI is an indicator of the efficiency of economy. Greater the difference between WPI and CPI means greater the inefficiencies, right? More charges in supply, storage, taxes, there could be distortions, there could be black marketing. So all this could be detected or analyzed by comparing these two. So for inflation targeting, RBI follows CPI, But for overall monitoring of the economy, it measures both CPI and WPI. Another thing, CPI covers both goods and services, but WPI only goods. So again, this is a comparison. WPI released by Office of Economic Advisor, Ministry of Commerce and Industry. CPI by CSO, MOSPI. Measures goods only, both goods and services. Items lesser, more. Base year 2011-12, base year 2012. So this is all about it. Then a small news, new app for National Museum. So hundreds of miniature paintings from National Museum's collections can now be seen through Google Arts and Culture Map. The project uses technologies such as machine learning, augmented reality, and digitization with high-definition robotic cameras to showcase these special works of art in a magical new way. So even you can go and watch these paintings. It is always good to know about your own culture. Then testimony of sexual assault victim enough for conviction. This is what the Supreme Court has said. So let us see what were the observations made by the court. So the court said that the sole and trustworthy evidence of a woman who is a victim of sexual offense is enough to find her assailant guilty. A woman who is a victim of sexual assault is not an accomplice to the crime, but is a victim. This is very important to identify, right? Of another person's lust, and is therefore her evidence need not be tested with the same amount of suspicion as that of an accomplice. So this is important because most of the times when there are allegations, there are cross questionings and at times they become very derogatory. Then Nag anti-tank missile completes final user trial. So let us see what this is. So DRDO carried out the final user trial of third generation anti-tank guided missile ATGM Nag at the Pokhran firing range, and it was launched from Nag missile carrier Namika. See, this is Namika 1 and this is your Nag missile. This looks like this. Cool, right? With this final user trial, Nag will enter into production phase. So now we will go for final production, and this is important. Again, India has been conducting many tests in the light of the standoff at LAC. Now some features. It was developed to engage highly fortified enemy tanks in day and night conditions. The missile has fire and forget and top attack capabilities with passive homing guidance to defeat all main battle tanks equipped with composite and reactive armor. So that means you just fire and you forget, it will go and seek the tank and then it will destroy it. Then tri-service synergy visible amid recent events. So if you remember, yesterday we discussed how Army Chief Major General Navarne, he said that the synergy between the three services and integration is a natural step in the ongoing defense reforms, and it will take some time, but this is surely happening. Now the same thing or similar thing has been said by the Navy Chief. He said that the tri-service synergy and coordination has peaked with establishment of Department of Military Affairs, as was visibly demonstrated in the joint response of the three services to recent events. The Navy had been on high operational alert and was seeking a close watch on movements in the Indian Ocean since the standoff began with China. So we are going for integration of the three armed forces. Then page 13, World Affairs, Oxford's Brazil vaccine trial to continue. So a volunteer in this trial died, but now they have continued this trial, right? Now, Amit calls for resignation. Thai PM lifts emergency. So we have already discussed about Thailand. So now he has lifted the emergency. Let us see how this develops. Once there is something substantial, we will discuss this again. Then Golden Dawn leaders sent to prison. All you need to know is that it is a neo-Nazi party in Greece, and it rose to prominence in the light of 2011, the economic crisis. And since then, it has been very strong in Greece. There were some cases and its leadership has been sent to prison. Then Vatican, Beijing renewed deal on appointment of bishops. So basically China, it broke up all the relations with Holy See, as the Vatican is known, in 1951. But then Vatican always wanted some backdoor to basically appoint the bishops in Chinese churches, because China established its own church. First of all, China does not accept any religion. So it gave some space, but that church was to be run under the Communist Party, right? They were appointing their own bishops. So Vatican always wanted to have a say. So they had an agreement in 2018 where Vatican was given the right to appoint priests and bishops in the Chinese churches. Now this is very, very interesting. So the present Pope, he's called the activist Pope, but he has never spoken out against Beijing. All the atrocities that are happening in China and Hong Kong on minority communities, including the Christians, the Pope has never spoken out against them. And as a matter of fact, recently the Secretary of State of America, he also went to Vatican, right? He was on a tour to Rome and the Pope refused to meet him. And America had been protesting against this agreement and they were asking the Vatican to not to do so. But it seems that Pope wants to make his legacy of increasing church's influence into China. That is why he's never saying anything against China. So that is the background that you need to know. Then Sri Lankan Parliament passes the 20th Amendment. Let us see. This amendment envisages expansive powers and greater immunity for the executive president and was passed in parliament with 2/3 majority. But now the Supreme Court in Sri Lanka, it has said that these amendments, they would also need to go through a referendum. This rolls back Sri Lanka's 19th Amendment, a 2015 legislation that sought to clip presidential powers while strengthening the parliament. But this new legislation in turn reduces the prime minister's role to a ceremonial one. So the president again is going to be all powerful. And since its history as an independent nation in modern times, Sri Lanka has been ruled by powerful presidents who have had all the power. This amendment also opens a way for people with dual citizenship to enter parliament in Sri Lanka. Now there is also a third Rajapaksa brother. One is the president of Sri Lanka, other is the prime minister of Sri Lanka, and the third one, he is a dual citizen, right? He holds citizenship of USA and also of Sri Lanka. So now they are trying to get the third one into the parliament as well. That is why the 20th legislation provides this clause. So the third Rajapaksa brother is a dual national. So after this becomes a law, we'll also see him having some role in the government. Page 14, just headlines. Smartphone market hits record 50 million units in Q3. So all the talk about boycotting China has gone to the drain because at the end of the day, people just look for their own convenience. So China's firm garners 76% shares. So the front page, Manifesto promise number 1, BJP injects free COVID vaccine in Bihar election. So what do you think? Should it be in election manifestos? Is it moral? Because if there is free COVID vaccine, it should be for everybody in India, irrespective of which state they belong to. So this is my 2 cents about it. You might have your own opinion. Then row in Nepal after raw chief meets Oli, party seeks detail. So this person, Mr. KP Sharma Oli, he seems to be a confused person. Earlier he was on an anti-India rant. He said all sorts of things. Lord Rama belonged to Nepal. Then I don't know what not he said. So let's not get into it. There's also a role of a very beautiful Chinese diplomat in it and Mr. KP Sharma's affections towards her. So let's not get into it. If you're interested, you can go and do the Google search of Chinese ambassador to Nepal. You'll see what I'm talking about. So the Nepal's embattled Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli came under fresh attack Thursday, including from 3 former ministers and his own party leadership for meeting Indian Raw Chief Samant Kumar Goel without keeping them in loop. Then Dr. Reddy's isolates data center services after cyber attack. We've all discussed. Now besides India, Dr. Reddy's has manufacturing facilities in United States, United Kingdom, Mexico and China. It has research and development facilities in US, UK and Netherlands. The company has 29 global offices in various continents. Then coming to page 2. Now this is a continuation of the manifesto thing. So now some important points here. So first, the center told states that center would be the only authority in India which would be acquiring vaccines on behalf of all the states. Then states can take their own stock from the center and they'll basically have to pay. Now center is promising, or the government or the political party at center is promising free vaccine for people in Bihar. So this is like a cheating on states, right? So center made it very clear that it will procure the vaccine or vaccines at rates it negotiates, and states may then be asked to purchase their own stocks. Now this is reinforced by the fact that the National Expert Group on Vaccine Administration, part of Centre's COVID task force, made it clear in its very first meeting that states should not chart their separate pathways for procurement, right? Now some important points for your PT examination, very, very important. So please pay attention. Now for the center to assure free vaccine across the nation, it may have to be brought under the flagship Universal Immunization Program under the National Health Mission. And if you remember, I have discussed in an earlier video about this program. In all, there are total 12 vaccines. Out of these 12, 9 are universal and 3 are for high burden districts, right? So the UIP is a fully funded central government scheme. These points are important for your PT. I am again telling you, so please pay attention. The UIP is a fully funded central government scheme that currently provides free vaccination to all children, including 2.67 newborns. At present, under the UIP, free vaccines are provided for 9 diseases at national level. Please pay attention. So what are the 9 diseases? Diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, polio, measles, rubella, and severe form of childhood tuberculosis, hepatitis B, and meningitis and pneumonia. Regionally and in selected endemic districts, free vaccines are provided for 3 more diseases: rotavirus diarrhea, pneumococcal pneumonia, and Japanese encephalitis. Bringing COVID into this list will need work. And if COVID has to be provided throughout the country, then it will have to be brought under the UIP scheme, and then this scheme would have to be extended for adults as well, right? Then a small news from page 6, 65% voting in Leh Hill Development Council election. So this was the first time this election was held after making Leh a UT. So this is the Leh Autonomous Hill Development Council, and it recorded just 65%. Now this has total 30 seats, out of which 26 are directly elected. These are again your PT points. It was constituted in accordance with the Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council Act 1995. That is all that you need to know about this. Then again, MEA, over 3,800 ceasefire violations by Pakistan this year. We have already discussed this, right? Now MEA, Pakistan has not completed action items. So it is understood that Pakistan has addressed only 21. I've told you 21 out of 27. Not taken any action against several terrorist entities and individuals, including those proscribed as UNSC terrorists such as Masoor Azhar, Dawood Ibrahim, Zakir-ur-Rahman Lakhvi. The FATF had placed Pakistan on grey list. Now again, Pakistan's Papa, China, will come and save it. Then see, nothing changes in India. Kerala Bishops Council, no change in church stand. Pope didn't justify same-sex marriage. So yesterday we discussed how Pope said that there should be civil union among LGBT people, right? They should have the right for that. And he said that for legal recognition. Now these people in India, I just can't comment on them. This is very regressive. Anyways, let's move on. Then page number 9, IAVI, MEREC and SII jointly develop COVID antibodies. So the International AIDS Vaccine Initiative, a non-profit scientific research organization dedicated to addressing urgent global health challenges, Serum Institute announced an agreement with MEREC, a science and technology company, to develop SARS-CoV-2 neutralizing monoclonal antibody. So they are again trying a new kind of therapy, co-invented by IAVI and Scripps Research. So the agreement builds on the advanced antibody discovery and optimization expertise of IAVI and Scripps, gained from years of experience in HIV, neutralizing antibody research and development, and on MEREC's and Serum Institute's significant capabilities in design and scale-up of accelerated manufacturing processes. So they have been working in development of antibodies for HIV, right? So HIV is the most difficult to beat. We have still not been able to completely beat it. So they have that expertise. So now they're going to come together. And Serum Institute is a group leader or a world leader in producing and scaling up manufacturing, right? So Serum Institute has a track record of more than 50 years in developing affordable medicines and is world's largest producer of vaccines. Almost 70% of world's vaccines are produced by Serum Institute of India. Now this editorial from the Indian Express, Healthy and Wise, very, very good editorial. This is telling us about millets. First, it tells us what are millets and where they are grown. Then it tells us why they are important. Then we'll discuss the causes of decline of millets and millet cultivation in India. And then finally, what Government of India is doing to promote millets. So let us get into it. So PM Modi, during his speech on World Food Day, he made a strong case for millets. FAO has endorsed India's call for declaring 2023 as International Year of Millets. Now there are 3 major millet crops currently growing in India. They are jowar, sorghum, bajra, pearl millet and ragi, finger millet. And along with that, India grows a rich array of biogenetically diverse and indigenous varieties of small millets like kodo, kutki, chenna and sanwa. Major producers include Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Gujarat and Haryana. And if you remember, I've told you time and again that this region, Punjab and Haryana, it is a semi-arid region originally. So it is suitable for growing millets, right? But because of green revolution, there was artificial changing in the agroclimatic practices that should have happened there. And that is the reason why there are so many ecological problems and problems in agriculture sector, including the depletion of underground water levels in Punjab and Haryana because of this artificial change. Now this is important. If you remember this year's PT, so many questions about agriculture. Now the importance of millets, they are very high in dietary fiber. They are also called nutri-cereals. They are powerhouse of nutrients including iron, folate, calcium, zinc, magnesium, phosphorus, copper, vitamins and antioxidants. So they are full of micronutrients. They are not only important for healthy growth and development of children, but they also have been shown to reduce the risk of heart disease and diabetes in adults. Now usually they are grown by small and poor farmers on dry, low fertile, mountainous, tribal and rain-fed areas. They are good for the soil, have shorter cultivation cycles and require less cost-intensive agriculture or cultivation. So that is the importance of millets, not only health but also for the small and poor farmers and also for the ecology. These unique features make millets suited for and resilient to India's varied agroclimatic conditions. Moreover, unlike rice and wheat, millets are not water or input intensive, making them a sustainable strategy for addressing climate change and building resilient agro-food systems. Very, very good editorial. Now in 1960s, before the Green Revolution, millets were extensively grown and consumed in India. Indian Council of Agricultural Research data shows, now this is talking about data, you can read that. Now why the neglect? Now we come to that. With the Green Revolution, the focus, rightly so, was on food security and high yielding varieties of wheat and rice. An unintended consequence of this policy was the gradual decline in the production of millets. Unfortunately, millets were increasingly seen as poor person's food, and if you see today, they are coming back as superfoods, and there are ragi biscuits and many products that are based on these millets, right? In contrast to consumer perception around more refined grains like rice and wheat, and that is one of the most important reasons for growing cases of obesity in India. The cost incentives provided via MSPs also favored handful of staple grains. So number one is your Green Revolution, and number two, the MSP regime that basically discouraged farmers to grow millets. And there was also behavioral change. People started seeing millets as poor man's grain. In parallel, India saw a jump in consumer demand for ultra-processed and ready-to-eat products, which are high in sodium, sugar, trans fat, and even some carcinogenics. All the processed foods, Maggi, chips, etc., they're all coming under this category. This need was again met by highly refined grains. Contrary to the popular belief, this phenomena was not restricted to urban areas. With the intense marketing of processed foods, even the rural population started perceiving mill-processed rice and wheat as more aspirational. And if you see today, organic products are becoming popular, and then there are products that are becoming popular and they're marketed as not being processed or polished in the mills. This has led to the double burden on mothers and children suffering from micronutrient deficiency and the astounding prevalence of diabetes and obesity. So this is the problem. And if you look at it, if people eat what is right for their agroclimatic region, then their bodies are fit. If you remember in the old age, right, before this Green Revolution, people from Punjab, Haryana and from Andhra, Telangana region, they were so sturdy, built so sturdy. And why? Because of their diets, which were very rich in these millets and coarse grains. Now they started consuming these refined grains, and we see high incidence of diabetes, obesity and many other problems. Now to address this situation, a multi-pronged strategy has been adopted for the promotion of nutri-cereals by the Modi government. So now what the government is doing to promote cereals in country, I am again telling you this is very, very important for your mains examinations as well. First strategy from a consumption and trade point of view was to rebrand coarse cereals, millets as nutri-cereals. So this is about changing the mindset of people, right? So now they have branded as nutri-cereals. Then second, the government hiked the MSP. So there was a problem. MSP was only focusing on wheat and rice. So they hiked the MSP for nutri-cereals, which came as a big price incentive for farmers. Number 3, to provide a steady market for the produce, government included millets in the PDS system. Again, a good step. Then 4th, the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare is running a 600 crore scheme to increase the area, production and yield of nutri-cereals. With a goal to match the cultivation of nutri-cereals with local topography and natural resources, the government is encouraging farmers to align their local cropping patterns to India's diverse 127 agroclimatic zones. So how many agroclimatic zones in India? 127, again important for your PT. Provisions of seed kits and inputs to farmers, building value chains through farmer producer organizations and supporting the marketability of nutri-cereals are some of the key interventions that have been put in place. And finally, Ministry of Women and Child Development has been working at the intersection of agriculture and nutrition by setting up Nutri Gardens. Again, important thing, Nutri Gardens. Promoting research on the interlinkages between crop diversity and dietary diversity and running a behavior change campaign to generate consumer demand for nutri-cereals. So a very, very good editorial. The 5 steps that Government of India is taking to promote nutri-cereals or cereals, right? And their importance, how they're important, rich in nutrients. They also support the small and poor farmers and the tribal farmers, and they're good for the ecology as well. They are not input sensitive, right? So in low cost, they yield better returns. So this is again a very, very good editorial, simple editorial. Please make your notes about this. Then the explainer, what Maharashtra move means for CBI probe. So basically, Maharashtra revoked the general consent to CBI to probe cases in the state. Now, only some parts. I'm not going to get into the stupid political things that are happening. So we'll just focus on the important points. So what kinds of cases is the CBI involved at state level? So CBI has an anti-corruption division that investigates cases against public servants under the control of central government, including those in public sector undertakings, cases against public servants working under state governments which have been entrusted to the CBI by the state, and serious departmental irregularities committed by above. So number 1, central government servants, and number 2, state government servants. For state government servants, those cases have to be transferred to CBI by the state governments. So this is the anti-corruption division. Next is the economic offences division that investigates financial crimes, bank frauds, money laundering, illegal money marketing operations and grafts in PSUs and banks. Then there's a special crimes division that handles cases of conventional nature such as offences relating to internal security, espionage, narcotics, antiquities, murders, dacoities, robberies and cheating among others. So these are the kinds of cases. So one is anti-corruption, other is economic offense, and third is special crimes. Then what about the key cases being probed by the NIA and ED? Now NIA has jurisdiction across the country and does not need special permission from state government. So this is very, very important point, that NIA can function in an unhindered manner. This is why the NIA has been able to take over the Bhima Koregaon case without the state's consent. And the ED conducts its probe under the PMLA, that is Prevention of Money Laundering Act, and the FERA Act, while the CBI draws its powers from the Delhi Police Special Establishment Act. So ED also can act without any state government concurrence. So how will this impact the CBI's day-to-day functions? Decision will increase work for both CBI and state government. Every time CBI catches any central government employee taking a bribe, it will need to seek approval from Maharashtra government before registering a case. The Maharashtra government too will be burdened with approval requests. So this is about this general consent. The states generally have given a general consent to CBI. So this has been revoked by Maharashtra, and West Bengal has already revoked it way back. Then we have already discussed NAG anti-tank missile. Now, US intelligence agencies say that Iran, Russia have tried to interfere in 2020 elections. So the US Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, he made this statement, and he's saying that Iran is working against Trump and Russia is working pro-Trump. So Ratcliffe said that government officials have already seen Iran sending spoofed emails designed to intimidate voters, incite social unrest and damage President Trump. The agencies previously warned that Iran might interfere to hurt Trump and Russia was trying to help in the election. Then important news, US Senate panel not for subpoenas to Facebook and Twitter CEOs. Now I have told you time and again, these companies, they are becoming way too powerful. For example, Twitter recently created a controversy it showed in India, map of India, which showed Ladakh as part of China. And they have that guts. This person, that Twitter's owner, he is kind of leftist. So, he promotes those things on his platform. Same is the case with Facebook. But these companies, they should not have that sort of power to control what the heads of states are saying. They can censor you and me because it's their platform. For all their talk of free speech and whatever, still they can do so, but not heads of state. Any state, even for Pakistani head of state, they should not be able to do so, right? So they have got a subpoena after the social media platforms decided to block stories from the New York Post that made claims about Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden's son. So now they are trying to influence the election in US because both of these platforms are anti-Trump, more so Twitter. Again, I told you because left-leaning, and Biden is also left-leaning, and his son has dealings with China and other countries, questionable dealings. So there were reports in New York Post about his controversial dealings, but these platforms, they blocked those reports on their own platform. The CEOs of Facebook and Twitter will testify on allegations of anti-conservative bias at a yet to be determined date. The companies have come under heavy criticism from conservatives over their decision to flag two New York Post stories as spreading disinformation and their attempts to clamp down on distribution of the stories. The CEOs of Facebook and Twitter, along with Alphabet's Google chief, will also testify in front of Senate committee on October 28 about a key law protecting internet companies. Then base year shifted, we have discussed. Now under the new series, the weightage for food group has gone down to 39.17 from 46.2. Now why are we revising? As per recommendations of ILO, Index Review Committee and the National Statistical Commission, the base year of price index numbers should be revised at frequent intervals, generally not exceeding 10 years, to reflect the changes that take place in consumption patterns of consumers. So that is why we keep revising them. Now, important news, despite COVID, wealth of Indian adults rises marginally in 6 months. So this report is by Credit Suisse. It is an international body, right? A private organization. So the average wealth of Indian adults rose marginally by $120 to $17,420 at the end of June 2020, right? Over the first half of 2020, while average wealth rose only by 1.7%, Credit Suisse estimated that full rise of 2020 will be 5 to 6% and 2021 will see a growth of about 9%. So there are some green shoots. The country had 907,000 adults in the top 1% of global wealth holders, which is a 1.8% share, it said. With 4,593 ultra-high net worth individuals in the country, as of end 2019, India came in fourth after US, China and Germany. India had approximately 912,000 millionaires, accounting for 2% of 51.9 million millionaires globally. So there, like I told you time and again, there's no dearth of wealth in India. The problem is only distribution. Then just the headline, outlook in real estate sector optimistic for next 6 months. Then CDCSO panel recommends nod for phase 3 trials of Covaxin. So Covaxin is developed by Bharat Biotech and CDCSO has given the nod. The subject expert committee, the SEC, has also set various criteria for participants to be conferred symptomatic cases. So all you need to know is that Bharat Biotech Development Limited has got the nod for phase 3. And I've already told you the architecture is CDCSO, then the DCGI. They give all the nods for field trials in India and also for releasing drugs. CPCB flags unsafe disposal of carcasses, issues guidelines for incineration, calls for better use of remains for fertilizers. So CPCB has come out with some guidelines. Let us look at them. About 30% of India's dead cattle and 40% of goats weren't flayed. Flayed means recovering of all the useful products and skinning of dead animals. Nearly 9 million bovine hides were lost annually due to non-recovery. So this is talking about the skin that could be used for leather industry. Now the draft guidelines require carcasses of livestock to be disposed of in incinerators, and municipal authorities must ensure that such facilities are set up and made available. However, the board has not specified any deadline for implementation of the guidelines. Now these dead bodies or carcasses are environmental hazard. Why? The carcasses, especially those that result from animal slaughter, are an environmental hazard and are partly to blame for bird hit hazards at airports. While the hide was mostly removed for leather, the carcasses were frequently left to putrefy in open and attracted vultures and dogs, polluting the environment and creating environmental hazard. This open dumping attracted birds, which can cause air accidents. Now the CPCB says that flaying of cattle could yield more commercial opportunities, for instance, meat meal, bone meal and technical fat. The process, however, would require setting up of carcass utilization plants where the parts of animal could be used to make tallow. Tallow is fat, nutritional supplements and fertilizer. The other methods of disposal were incineration and deep burial, but the CPCB said that these techniques, which are now in dominant method of disposal, must be put to use only in case of utilization plants couldn't be set up. And the state pollution control boards should ensure that carcasses were being disposed of properly, the board said. So these are the guidelines that CPCB has come up with regarding the disposal of carcasses. So folks, that is all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel. Also press the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any new videos, and please give us a thumbs up if you liked our videos. Also connect with us on our Instagram page UPSC for everyone, and please connect with us on our Telegram page where you can access the PDFs of the videos that I'll be posting daily, right? So see you next time. Till then, stay happy, stay safe and have a great day. Namaste and Jai Hind.